From a butler who worked as a professional wrestler to tragic deaths that sparked curse rumors, the wholesome sitcom Family Affair hid darker secrets behind its cheerful facade. Discover the chaotic filming schedule, last-minute casting disasters, and heartbreaking real-life tragedies that forever changed television's most beloved family. Fact 1. Sissy was recast mid-pilot. When Family Affair began filming its pilot episode in 1966, the role of Sissy Davis was already cast, and cameras were rolling. The original actress chosen to play the teenage daughter had landed what seemed like a dream role on a major network sitcom, but then disaster struck in the most unexpected way. She had taken a trip to Europe just before production was set to begin, and during her travels abroad, she gained 15 pounds. When she returned to Hollywood and showed up on set, the producers were shocked by her appearance. They felt she no longer looked right for the part of the sophisticated teenager they had envisioned. In a decision that must have been devastating for the young actress, they fired her immediately and began scrambling to find a replacement before they fell too far behind schedule. That's when 20-year-old Kathy Garver walked into the audition room with her hair spray-painted blonde and won the role on the spot. The original actress never appeared in a single frame of the pilot, and all of her scenes were scrapped completely. Garver stepped in and took over the role seamlessly, going on to play Sissy Davis for the show's entire 5-season run. The identity of the original actress has remained largely forgotten by television history, while Garver became synonymous with the character and the series itself. Fact 2. Mr. French was a professional wrestler. Sebastian Cabot became famous for playing the refined and dignified gentleman's gentleman Giles French, a butler so proper and elegant that he seemed like he'd been born wearing a three-piece suit. But before he ever stepped into that role, Cabot had one of the most unlikely careers imaginable for someone who would later become television's most beloved butler. In his younger years back in London, England, Cabot worked as a professional wrestler, spending 3 full years grappling with opponents in the ring and entertaining crowds with his physical prowess. He also worked as a chef during this period of his life, showing a completely different side of himself than the aristocratic character he would later portray. His wrestling career came to an abrupt end when he suffered an injury that forced him to retire from the sport. From there, Cabot transitioned into acting, where his imposing physical presence and natural charisma helped him land roles on stage and eventually in film and television. By the time he was cast as Mr. French, Cabot had completely reinvented himself as a sophisticated character actor, and audiences had no idea that the man serving tea and crumpets had once been, throwing punches and body slams in wrestling rings across London. Fact 3. 4 episodes filmed simultaneously. Family Affair faced a unique challenge that most television shows didn't have to deal with, and it created absolute chaos on set. Because the show featured 2 young children as main characters, Anissa Jones and Johnny Whitaker, California's strict child labor laws applied to the production. These laws limited the amount of time the kids could work to just 8 hours per day, which included time for schooling, rehearsals, and actual filming. To work around these restrictions and still maintain their demanding production schedule, the producers came up with an unconventional solution that sounds almost impossible. They would film 4 different episodes at the same time, bouncing between different sets and different storylines, all in the same day. The cast and crew would shoot scenes from one episode in the morning, then move to another set and film scenes from a completely different episode in the afternoon. This meant that actors had to keep track of multiple storylines, different costumes, and different emotional beats all happening simultaneously. As you can imagine, this created massive continuity errors throughout the series. Characters' hair lengths would change between scenes, props would appear and disappear, and sometimes actors would forget which episode they were even filming. Despite the confusion, this system allowed the show to produce enough episodes to fill out each season while staying within the legal limits for child actors. Fact 4. Brian Keith only worked 2 months a year. Brian Keith had the kind of contract that most television actors could only dream about, and it completely changed how Family Affair was produced. Instead of being required to show up for work throughout the entire production schedule like a normal TV series, Keith negotiated a deal where he would film all of his scenes for an entire season in just 2 concentrated blocks of 30 days each. That meant he only spent about 2 months out of the year actually working on the show. During those intense filming periods, Keith would shoot every single scene that featured his character, Uncle Bill, working long hours to capture everything that was needed. Once those 2 months were finished, he was completely free to pursue other projects, and he took full advantage of that freedom by starring in movies and taking on other roles throughout the rest of the year. While Keith was off making films, the rest of the cast and crew would continue production on Family Affair, filling in all the scenes that didn't require Uncle Bill to be present. They would use his pre-recorded footage and carefully structure episodes around the material they already had in the can. This meant that many episodes featured Uncle Bill more heavily in certain scenes, while other storylines focused on the children and Mr. French. It was an unusual arrangement that gave Keith incredible flexibility in his career while still anchoring one of television's most popular family sitcoms. Fact 5. Glenn Ford turned down Uncle Bill. Before Brian Keith ever put on Uncle Bill's signature cardigan and became the guardian of 3 orphaned children, the role was offered to someone else entirely. Glenn Ford, who was a major movie star at the time, with credits including films like Gilda and The Blackboard Jungle, was the first choice for the part of Bill Davis. The producers thought Ford would bring star power and credibility to the new series, and they approached him with what seemed like an attractive offer for a television sitcom. But Ford turned them down flat. He wasn't interested in committing to a weekly television series, preferring to focus on his film career instead. After Ford passed on the opportunity, the producers turned their attention to Brian Keith, who was primarily known for his work in westerns and supporting roles in movies. Keith was interested but wanted more than just an acting job. He negotiated a deal that made him not only the star of the show, but also a part owner of the production, giving him a financial stake in its success. This turned out to be an incredibly smart move, as Family Affair became a massive hit and ran for 5 seasons. Keith's ownership stake meant he earned money not just from his salary, but from the show's profits and eventual syndication deals, making him far wealthier than a standard acting contract would have provided. Fact 6. Buffy was forced to stay 6 years old. One of the darkest behind-the-scenes stories from Family Affair involves how the show's producer, Don Feddersen, insisted on keeping Buffy Davis frozen in time as a perpetual 6-year-old child. When the series began, Anissa Jones was actually 6 years old and perfectly fit the character. But as the show continued for 5 seasons, Jones naturally grew and matured like any normal child would. She was entering her teenage years, her body was developing, and she was no longer the tiny little girl with pigtails who had started the series. Feddersen refused to acknowledge this reality. He wanted Buffy to remain the adorable, innocent 6-year-old that audiences had fallen in love with, regardless of what was happening to the actress who played her. To maintain this illusion, Jones was reportedly required to bind her chest as she began developing during puberty, a practice that was not only physically uncomfortable but emotionally damaging to a young teenager trying to grow up. She had to continue wearing the same style of little girl dresses, the same hairstyles, and act the same way she had when she was actually 6 years old, even though she was now 11 or 12. This forced infantilization took a serious toll on Jones, who struggled with being treated like a small child when she was becoming a young woman. The restrictive way the show handled her natural growth and development contributed to the difficulties she faced after the series ended. Fact 7. Mr. French was replaced by his brother. During the fourth season of Family Affair, Sebastian Cabot fell seriously ill and was unable to work for an extended period. This created a major problem for the show since Mr. French was such a central character and appeared in nearly every episode. The producers couldn't simply write him out without explanation, so they came up with a creative solution that introduced one of the strangest storylines in the series. They brought in actor John Williams to play Giles French's twin brother, Nigel French, who coincidentally was also a gentleman's gentleman and looked remarkably similar to his brother. The show explained that Giles had been called away to London to serve the Queen of England on urgent business, which is why he couldn't be with the Davis family. Nigel stepped in to take care of the household in his brother's absence, wearing the same style of clothing and essentially performing the exact same duties. Williams appeared in 9 episodes during this period, doing his best to fill Cabot's shoes while the beloved actor recovered from his illness. When Cabot was healthy enough to return to work, Giles French came back from England, and Nigel disappeared from the show without much fanfare. The whole twin brother storyline was never referenced again, and the series went back to normal as if Nigel had never existed. It was a classic example of television scrambling to deal with an unexpected real-life crisis. Fact 8. The twins weren't originally twins. When Family Affair was first being developed, the characters of Buffy and Jody Davis were written as siblings of different ages rather than twins. The original concept had them as a younger sister and slightly older brother, which would have created different dynamics within the family and different types of storylines. But when Johnny Whitaker and Anissa Jones came in to audition for the roles, something unexpected happened that changed the entire direction of the show. The producers were so charmed by how adorable the two children looked together and how naturally they interacted with each other that they made a spontaneous decision to rewrite the characters completely. They thought Whitaker and Jones had an undeniable chemistry and a sweetness when they appeared on screen together that would be even more appealing if they played twins instead of just siblings. Making them twins meant they could dress them alike, create matching storylines, and emphasize their bond as children who had lost their parents and only had each other. The twin angle also added to the cuteness factor that was so central to the show's appeal, with matching outfits and parallel story arcs becoming a regular feature. This last-minute creative decision proved to be the right call, as Buffy and Jody's relationship as twins became one of the most beloved aspects of Family Affair. Their matching personalities, their loyalty to each other, and their shared adventures made them absolutely central to the show's success. Fact 9. A real broken leg became a storyline. Television productions usually have to work around actor injuries by hiding them or writing characters out temporarily, but Family Affair handled it in a completely different way. During production, Anissa Jones actually broke her leg in a real accident, which left her in a cast and unable to perform the physical activities that her character Buffy normally did on the show. Instead of trying to hide the injury or having her character mysteriously disappear for a few episodes, the writers took a bold approach. They created an entire episode in just one day that incorporated Jones's real broken leg directly into the storyline. In the episode, Buffy breaks her leg and has to deal with being in a cast, which meant that Jones could play the scenes authentically since she was actually experiencing what her character was going through. This quick thinking by the writers allowed production to continue without interruption and actually turned a potential problem into a compelling story that young viewers could relate to. The episode dealt with how Buffy felt frustrated by her limitations, how her family rallied around to help her, and how she learned to cope with a temporary disability. It was a surprisingly realistic and educational storyline that came about purely because of an accident, and it showed how adaptable the production team was when faced with unexpected challenges during filming. Fact 10. Brian Keith recommended Johnny Whitaker. The casting of Johnny Whitaker as Jody Davis didn't happen through a typical audition process, but rather through a personal recommendation from Brian Keith himself. Before Family Affair even began production, Keith was working on the comedy film The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, which was released in 1966. During the making of that movie, Keith worked with young Johnny Whitaker, who had a small role in the film. Even though Whitaker was just a child actor with limited experience, Keith was incredibly impressed by his professionalism, his natural talent, and his ability to take direction. He saw something special in the young boy that made him think Whitaker would be perfect for the new television series he was about to start. When it came time to cast the role of Jody, Keith actively pushed for Whitaker to be given the part, telling the producers that he had worked with the boy before and could vouch for his abilities. Keith's recommendation carried significant weight since he was the star of the show and had negotiated to be a part owner of the production. The producers trusted his judgment and brought Whitaker in for the role. Keith's instincts proved to be absolutely correct, as Whitaker became one of the show's breakout stars and remained a successful child actor throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s, going on to star in other projects after. Family Affair ended. Fact 11. The Family Affair Curse Legend. Over the years, a dark legend has grown around Family Affair due to the tragic fates of several cast members, leading some people to speak of a curse hanging over the show. 3 of the main cast members died under circumstances that shocked fans and seemed far too tragic for a series that had been so wholesome and uplifting. Anissa Jones, who played the adorable Buffy Davis, died from a drug overdose in 1976 when she was only 18 years old, just a few years after the show ended. Her death was particularly devastating because she had struggled with the aftermath of child stardom and had difficulty transitioning to adult life and adult roles. Sebastian Cabot, who played Mr. French, suffered a stroke and died in 1977 at the age of 59, which was relatively young considering his otherwise healthy lifestyle. Then, decades later, Brian Keith died by suicide in 1997 after suffering from emphysema and lung cancer and dealing with the recent death of his daughter. These 3 tragic deaths, combined with the struggles that other cast members faced in their personal lives after the show ended, led some fans and entertainment journalists to speculate about a curse, similar to the ones attributed to other television shows and movies. While there's no rational basis for believing in an actual supernatural curse, the pattern of misfortune among the cast members has become part of Family Affair's legacy and continues to be discussed whenever people talk about the show's history. Fact 12. Anissa was rejected for The Exorcist. After Family Affair ended in 1971, Anissa Jones tried to transition from child actress to more mature and serious roles. One of the most famous auditions she had was for the role of Regan McNeil, the possessed child in The Exorcist, which would become one of the most terrifying and iconic horror films ever made. Jones desperately wanted to shed her wholesome image as Buffy Davis and prove she could take on darker, more challenging material. She went into the audition hoping to show director William Friedkin that she had the range to play a character who transforms from an innocent girl into a vessel for demonic possession. But Friedkin rejected her almost immediately. According to reports from the audition, he told Jones that she looked too tranquil and too angelic to convincingly play a child who becomes violent, vulgar, and utterly terrifying. Her image as sweet little Buffy was so ingrained in people's minds that even a director looking to cast a horror movie couldn't see past it. The role eventually went to Linda Blair, who was relatively unknown at the time and didn't carry the baggage of being associated with a popular family sitcom. Blair's performance became legendary and launched her career, while Jones continued to struggle to find work that would allow her to break free from her typecast image. This rejection was just one example of how difficult it was for Jones to move beyond the character that had made her famous as a child. Fact 13. 5th season had direct-to-camera greetings. During the fifth and final season of Family Affair, the show made a strange creative decision that completely broke the fourth wall and changed how episodes began. Instead of starting with the normal opening credits and jumping straight into the story, most episodes in Season 5 featured Sebastian Cabot, or the twins Anissa Jones and Johnny Whitaker, speaking directly to the camera as themselves, not as their characters. They would say things like, "Good evening, so nice of you to join us," or "We're so glad you could be with us tonight," acknowledging the viewing audience in a way that shattered the illusion of the fictional world. This was a dramatic departure from the traditional sitcom format and seemed oddly formal for a show about a family with young children. The direct-to-camera greetings gave the episodes an almost theatrical quality, as if the actors were hosting a variety show rather than appearing in a scripted comedy. It's unclear exactly why the producers made this choice for the final season. It may have been an attempt to create a more intimate connection with the audience, or perhaps it was meant to give the show a more sophisticated feel. Whatever the reason, it stands out as one of the most unusual stylistic choices in the series and makes the fifth season episodes feel distinctly different from the earlier years when the show followed more conventional sitcom structures. Fact 14. The show shared a universe with My Three Sons Family Affair didn't exist in isolation, but was actually part of a shared television universe that included other popular sitcoms of the era. The show existed in the same fictional world as My Three Sons and To Rome with Love, all of which were produced by Don Feddersen Productions. This connection wasn't just implied, but was actually made explicit through crossover appearances where characters from one show would appear on another. The most notable crossovers happened on To Rome with Love, where characters from both Family Affair and My Three Sons made guest appearances, confirming that all three shows took place in the same reality. This was a fairly unusual practice for sitcoms in the 1960s, as most shows existed in their own separate universes without acknowledging each other. The shared universe concept added an extra layer of continuity for viewers who watched multiple Feddersen productions, and it created opportunities for special crossover episodes that could draw audiences from all three shows. While the crossovers weren't frequent enough to be a major part of any show's identity, they demonstrated that the producers were thinking about their programs as part of a larger connected world. This approach would become much more common in later decades with shows like Cheers and Frasier, or the various Chicago-based Dick Wolf dramas. But Family Affair was part of an early experiment in television universe building. Fact 15. Kathy Garver was 20, playing a teenager. When Kathy Garver auditioned for the role of 15-year-old Sissy Davis, she was already 20 years old, making her 5 years older than the character she was trying to play. This age gap was unusual even by Hollywood standards, where it's common for adults to play teenagers, but typically with a smaller age difference. Garver knew she needed to do something dramatic to make herself look young enough for the part, so she came up with a creative solution for her audition. She was naturally a brunette, but she thought the character should be blonde to create a visual contrast with the other family members and to fit the wholesome all-American image the producers were likely looking for. Not having time for a professional dye job, Garver grabbed a can of Streaks and Tips, which was a spray-on temporary hair color product, and spray-painted her dark brown hair blonde right before walking into the audition room. The improvised transformation worked perfectly. The producers were impressed not just by her appearance, but by her maturity and acting ability, which actually made her age advantage work in her favor. Playing a teenager while being an adult meant she could work longer hours without the restrictions of child labor laws, she could handle more complex storylines, and she brought a sophistication to the role that a real 15-year-old might not have been able to deliver. Garver played Sissy for the entire 5-season run of the show, and audiences never questioned that she was actually a young woman in her 20s pretending to be a high school student. Be a high school student. Be a high school student. Be a high